Welcome back, viewers at home. You're joining us right here on INX Prime for our current affairs segment. Now, the government of national unity led by President Cyril Ramaphosa has so far impressed South Africans. There are 11 parties, including the ANC, who are running the country since June this year. Weeks into the 7th administration, reports surfaced that the ANC ministers complained that DA ministers were doing so well, they made them look bad. However, at the provincial level, Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi decided against a provincial government of unity, so have a number of metros in Gauteng. The question now is, what is the impact of this peculiar political reality and how sustainable is it, especially as the 2026 local government elections loom large? Now, joining me is political analyst Dr Fikile Vilakazi, who will give us more insight, and she's also the director of the University of the Western Cape's Gender Equity Unit. Good evening, Dr Vilakazi, and thank you so much for joining us on Prime Live.
Good evening to you and to viewers at home. Thank you for inviting me.
Now, South Africa is in uncharted waters with the GNU led by our current president, Cyril Ramaphosa. And South Africans also are quite, generally feeling like it is working well. We have also seen pockets of good work by various government ministers and so forth. What is your assessment of how well it has done so far or otherwise?
Well, I think my reading of the situation shows that the government of national unity is not intact. I think at a national level, you are seeing a picture where they are trying very, very hard to present a story to South Africans of something that is working. But we know that it is possibly because of the strategic opportunities that lie for those who are in the GNU at national level, which is things like perhaps getting into ministries, getting closer to the treasury, and so on. At a provincial level and at a municipal level, it's a different story. We have seen in Gauteng, we are seeing it also in KwaZulu-Natal and other smaller metros. The dysfunctionality of the idea of a provincial government of unity. And I'll tell you why in Gauteng, for instance, things are happening the way they're happening. You would know that the relationship between the DA and the ANC have always been tense. Even before the GNU, Premier Panyaza Lesufi has been, even before he became a premier, I think he was still an MEC for education in Gauteng. He was at loggerheads with the ANC government, with the DA government, just in terms of how they are governing, the education system within the province. They were calling each other names, even making, mudslinging around issues of race and so on. So it's a relationship that has been tainted from those days. When he became the premier, things became even worse, right? When they were trying to negotiate governing the province together between themselves and the EFF and Al-Jama and many other political parties, smaller political parties that were emerging. They could never find each other at an ideological level. Things around just the governance of rates, and paying of rates within the province to make sure that you generate revenue for the province. They disagreed vehemently when a leader of the DA, for instance, was saying, let them go and get a loan so that they can rebuild the city of Johannesburg. They can make sure that they offset revenue that they're not able to generate because citizens are not paying for electricity and water and so on within municipality. They disagreed a lot fundamentally around those issues, where the DA wanted to get a loan, but the ANC was like, we are not getting a loan, and other political parties as well. So there are fundamental questions of ideological difference. Coming to GNU now, we have seen at national level, President Cyril Ramaphosa and other parties, for instance, agreed to say, yes, take the GNU. But Panyaza was saying, I'm not going into a GNU. They probably were one of the few provincial governments that eventually entered into a GNU. So we can see how strained those relationships are, how then they compromise the stability of something that they're calling a GNU, which I do not think is actually a GNU. I think it's some kind of a broader coalition. And my reading, really, without undermining the political system of the country, is that I don't think it's going to last for the next couple of years to come. I really think it's something that will collapse as we go along.
Now, there's a bit of nuances out there that says that there is a good working relationship between the two main parties, being the ANC and the DA. However, there's still a political contradiction. What, in your opinion, is the glue that is holding it together?
When we came from the 2024 elections, my analysis and many other colleagues of ours was that, you see, what's happening in the GNU is not necessarily about the political parties themselves. It's a state of the political system that we find ourselves in. And I found that we are actually in a place that you call a continuum because of the fact that there is no majority political party that is ruling South Africa. So you are following the rhythm of the voter. The voter has said that we are exhausted by corruption. We are exhausted by a sort of like something that feels like a one-party state that just continues to embezzle, right, the resources of the nation. So in a way, that system put us in this place where political parties then were forced. I don't think they're doing GNU because they want it. They actually are forced by the voter turnout to say you have no choice but to work together. But what then has happened, listeners, viewers at home, is that political parties did not do the preparatory work, even as we anticipated that the country is going towards a model politically that says we are no longer going to have a one-party state because we have seen how that is dangerous for citizens. We are going towards co-governance. We are going towards a possibility of coalitions. Political parties were still adamant, still driven by their egos to say, we want to end up elections for a majority win, which was obviously inevitable, in terms of the way things were looking, even from way back as 2012. So the problem that we are sitting with here is the problem of egoism. Right? People still firmly believe that they can win the majority voter in South Africa without necessarily doing the work that it takes to win the voter, which is the work of service delivery. And the experiences of Johannesburg, the experiences of Tshwane, the experiences of Nelson Mandela Bay, the experiences of eThekwini are showing us that, to say you cannot convince voters to vote for you and garner you support without delivering on the ground. And eventually then we've ended where we are. As a country, and even in municipalities and provinces where political parties are finding themselves now really having to co-govern under circumstances where they don't agree ideologically. They don't even know how to compromise, to do that work of saying, yes, we differ ideologically, but can we center the citizen? They're battling. See what's happening between the DA and the ANC. In eThekwini, see what's happening in Johannesburg. So it's still a question of ego. It's still a question of saying we are not going to sit on the same table and enjoy the same access to the purse of the nation and to the resources, and of course then citizens suffer in that process.
Still taking a look at those provinces, we see that Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi forming a minority government that excludes the DA. That looks like a defiance of Luthuli House. How, if at all, will this impact the GNU at the national level?
The defiance campaign within the ANC is not something new with Panyaza. We started seeing it in KZN a couple of days ago with Upegi Mtolo, when he started lashing out on Nehau. And we started seeing it a couple of years ago towards Polokwane elections, towards the electoral conference in December that has put President Ramaphosa into the second term. So there has been defiance. And you also started seeing it with the defections into Mkhonto weSizwe in the 2024 elections. So what it means then is that Luthuli House is being defied. We've seen that defiance when we're dealing with the question of Phala. There are members within the ANC who are saying we are going to vote differently. So defiance has been the texture of the political space within the ANC. What has kept people rather within the political party is the fact that there are very few options in terms of where else to go, and people toe the line. But I think Panyaza Lesufi is beginning to show signs of dissatisfaction, really, and deep-seated frustration. Who knows? He could be the next in line out of the political party because he is very clear. He doesn't want to work with the DA, and he's finding himself in a hard, caught up between a rock and a hard place because now he has to toe the line and follow the route that the president has taken, that the National Executive Committee perhaps has taken. Remember, when actually this decision was taken around forming a government of national unity, they had 14 days. South Africans, 14 days, which meant then that people who took the decision were the NEC members. And I want to believe even the discussion with the ANC, within the NEC, we're not really that democratic. What about the branches? What about the alliance members who really are the voter base and the backbone of what forms the African National Congress? So GNU was formed really on rocky grounds, and it's bound to show this kind of defiance. And I think it's only going to deepen itself as we move along towards local government elections. But I can tell you now, Prima Panyaza Lesufi is not interested in working with the DA, and I think that's clear.
Now, just as closing remarks from you, Dr. Vilakazi, with regards to understanding the impact of the ideology that the GNU is working on a national level and not on a more municipal as well as provincial level, what would be your closing remarks on that?
My closing remarks would be that I think our political system is really in a state of chaos, unfortunately. It is calling for something that feels like a coalition. That's not maybe, right? We need to find a way of working together. But I'm not sure at this point whether the current arrangements of the political system that we have is taking us there. We need to revisit ideas of democratic centralism. I keep on hammering on this point because the majority of our political parties, all of them except the DA, perhaps in the IFP, are governed by this idea of democratic centralism, but they're highly undemocratic in their practices internally. The DA is talking about federal democratic governance. The IFP is also talking about federalism. And I'm thinking we need something in between. We need a different political system. As a nation, we need to come together and review our political system. Is it still servicing the needs that we have without necessarily being married to ideas of nostalgia, because of where we come from around liberation and how we bought into the idea of centralism from the Soviet Union, maybe from China and Korea and so on. It may not necessarily be a wrong political ideological stance to take, but I think we are doing something wrong in how we implement it. So for me, that's what I would say in closing, that all of us, all political parties have got to revisit whether the political arrangements of our country are really proper for us to be able to do the work of the National Democratic Revolution, which is a social contract that we all committed to, even during the liberation struggle, even post-liberation, if it is post at all, fellow South Africans.
Dr. Fikile, thank you so much for joining us this evening and just sharing insight on all this, hoo-ha around GNU.
Thank you very much.
Viewers at home, that was my guest, who is a political analyst who goes by the name of Dr. Fikile Vilakazi. That's where we close it off for now. Let's head over to a net break. See you when we come back.